at the summer playoffs where he started off 0-4, but this 6-0, Darroch, is no different. It was one of the classes when we started off in day number 1 that is pretty much all one archetype that we're talking about. We're the Death Rattle Hunter, but there were some mid-range hunters, there's some secret hunters, there's a few spell hunters.
Invited the #1 points leader to the top 8 championships back then. Can Bunnyhoppor get to the championships one more time and perhaps repeat, which would be quite the performance? We've seen people go to back-to-back seasons for championships, and that's it for his lineup in this field. So it's interesting to see how this is going to pan out.
Yeah, I think he's got a little bit more of an anti-druid strategy going a lot here, with the Taunt Druid being very good against the Malagos Druids, the Togwaggle Druids, because you just dominate the board so heavily. The Control Mage also being a decent matchup against the Malagos Druids. But clearly here, Insane, with his super aggressive lineup, banning away that Control Mage right at the start. And Bunnyhoppor is left with a few decks that are actually pretty susceptible to aggressive strategies. Miracle Rogue is not designed to be beating those aggressive decks. It's much more for the slightly slower decks that are vulnerable to Sap and Leroy, all that damage coming through. And this Death Rattle Hunter here, we saw it was one of the lowest win rate classes, or Hunter in general was, and it's not looking like it's going to get any better with this match.
Well, we'll start things off with Death Rattle Hunter versus the Zoo Warlock, and this has kind of been an MVP combo we've seen for Zoo, which is Soul Infusion and Doubling Imp, and it's also positioned just perfectly to be on the left side of the hand. So, you know, however, we've seen Insane on stream have those kinds of starts, and yet lose anyways to the Hunter, but it was a different type of Hunter. It was a secret Hunter that wrapped up the series yesterday. So, definitely some fresh wounds, if you will, and being 4-2 improving to 5-2 still doesn't necessarily guarantee anything, but you have to keep in mind that these players are still going to play their hearts out because there's still points on the line for the following season.
And for players like Insane, it's very, very important to do. If he could get himself, like you said, not even to the top 8, at least qualifying for the next season, try and get his name out there. A little bit more, you know, recognition would be very nice for his Hearthstone career, whereas Bunnyhoppor, everyone knows who he is, already going to the World Championships. So for him, it's really just proving that he's still got it. In every meta, his genius can make it work.
That's right. Bunnyhoppor, of course, studying for his PhD on the side of playing Hearthstone, says that, you know, Hearthstone's always been something that he does on the side part-time, and it's kind of an inspirational thing. It's not supposed to make other players feel bad. Like, yes, you guys grind all day, every day, and I just play a little bit and still am good. It's more just showing how you can actually partition your resources for time to try and manage your real life plus playing Hearthstone. And Bunnyhoppor, of course, being also very good at other games like chess, really comes into play here.
He said multiple times in his interviews how difficult it is to get that balance. I believe this season, when lots of players were going for ladder finishes, he had to finish writing some of his dissertation for his PhD. So showing he's a very busy man, but still, just because he's so darn clever, manages to make it work.
All right, well, I mean,
he's not going to be making this one work, I don't think.
Not much good stuff going on. I was thinking Devilsaur Egg was like his only really good play the previous turn. Or sorry, for turn 3. Can remove a little bit with Hunter's Mark, but still doesn't kind of solve the problem of the board state as well. So Spider Bomb could be really impactful, but the problem of Spider Bomb is if you're developing into a deck that likes to play a lot of small minions through things like Light Warden or other token-based stuff, it feels like it can go disastrously wrong. Yeah,
it does make Insane's life a little bit awkward, because if Bunnyhoppor does play the Spider Bomb here, he probably won't feel comfortable in just leaving it up and going aggressive, pushing damage to the face, because then Bunnyhoppor can make all kind of nonsense occur with Play Dead, Terrascale Stalkers, and your board will just get wiped up so quickly by the Spider Bomb. So I do actually like it here from Bunnyhoppor, because it really just forces Insane to play in a way that isn't optimal. He wants to just be going super aggressive, closing out the game quickly, but I think he'll be too afraid of those Death Rattle effects on this Spider Bomb.
Yeah, I like the preemptive attack as well, based on how the Death Rattle destroy a random minion could impact. It might be the difference of whether or not he can actually get an extra attack in and kill all his opponent's minions. Stop copying me!
Insane, feeling the pressure, just has to trade in a 4-4 into that, which is really not what you're looking to do, but it does mean he can just keep the pressure going, load up on the board, and pray that his opponent doesn't have those defensive strategies like maybe an Ironfur Grizzly going wide with Devilsaur Eggs or Deathstalker Rexar that we see there. Could be just what Bunnyhoppor needs to pull this back in the later turns.
Yeah, he's going to need Rexar to make those swings because, again, Bunnyhoppor playing a little bit of the greedier version of having things like Charged Devilsaur. I mean, he does have some other ways to cement a board position through Witchwood Grizzly, but without having Katharina and without having, you know, the ability to stop this aggression, when Fungalmancer hits the board, it's going to be kind of a gut check of whether or not Bunnyhoppor can deal with kind of how much pressure is coming.
And at the moment, it's not looking like he will be able to get there.
Yeah.
He's clearly a big favorite, or sorry, has a lot of respect for Ziliax in the card, as I believe he has it in 3 out of his 4 decks. Even in decks that I wouldn't really traditionally consider putting it in, like Miracle Road and this Hunter, just because he thinks the lifesteal in an aggro meta, or in the aggro meta of this full playoffs at least, could be very strong.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good point. Giggling Inventor in a Miracle Rogue is surprisingly lackluster given of what it's trying to do. As much as it's fantastic for protecting your threats and your health total, Ziliax just fights for tempo a little bit better, even if you don't necessarily have ways to magnetize it traditionally. And then also, of course, by playing Giggling Inventor, you also play into everyone's Blood Knights and Mossy Horrors, which are starting to get really popular, or Mind Control tech, which is what makes your deck really vulnerable because you tend to get Spider Summons, and if you play Giggling Inventor, you have a very wide board.
That is a fantastic point. I think if there was no tech for Giggling Inventor, we would see it a little bit more. The players having to be cautious with it. It's not even in the Control Mage for Bunnyhoppor, which is a real surprise, clearly anticipating a lot of Mossy Horrors, because it is fantastic in Control Mage.
Yeah, Control Mage, of course, being banned, even though there's not many good matchups for Bunnyhoppor, but one of the decks that can perform well is Big Spell Mage.
Yeah.
Taunt Druid is also pretty decent, so banning either or depends on Insane's deck list here. So coming up on turn 5, we anticipated Fungalmancer being one of the big, important cards to center on. Insane does have other options, though, because he can go a little bit wider onto the board. The problem is the threat of Deathstalker Rexar, because if he plays Prince Caliseth, Coldblood Librarian, Light Warden, go a little bit wider, that means the Death Knight's going to be a very punishing battle cry.
And I think this is a very good read of the situation by Insane. He knows things are starting to look a little bit scary for Bunnyhoppor. The power plays are going to start coming down. But if he goes quick, tries to close out the game maybe with a Doomguard or a Soulfire off of the top, that's what he's going to need to finish out this game before Rexar, Ziliax, Katharina can do all its nonsense. And it's looking like it may just get there even with the pickup of Ziliax.
So Deathstalker Rexar clears off every minion except for 1 on the board. There's going to be a Soul 4-attack minion remaining. And then you can use Ziliax to kind of repair your health a little bit, plus any Build-A-Beast that you pick up. I mean, I think Bunnyhoppor still has a really good chance to close this game out if Insane can't press in with Soulfire or Doomguard, and instead is stuck with building up a slower board with Light Warden and Fungal Enchanters. I mean, Light Warden's not even as insane as it usually is because he hasn't taken a single point of damage.
That's true. That's a good point. The hero power has not been pressed once. But Bunnyhoppor here not even opting to clear up the board, I guess, expecting that on the following turn, the follow-up will either be killing him through burst damage in the worst-case scenario, but more likely a big play onto the board, going super wide with chain gangs, happy ghouls, stuff like that.
Yeah, and the play dead's not exactly that useful. Just actually just summon 0/3s on the board.
Right.
So Insane having to deal with Ziliax means that his opponent gains a little bit of life if he doesn't Soulfire. He's going to draw with his Coldblood Librarian after buffing the deck, so he's very intent on gaining that little buff. A little bit awkward because of his mana expenditure. Can't get the Light Wardens and the heals right now, but he can Soulfire, build the biggest board possible, and this is something that Bunnyhoppor was probably hoping for, developing a wider board because of how many cards Zoo was holding, and then playing Deathstalker Rexar, catching everything in one fell swoop.
He's just playing mind games here, trying to trick Insane and going wide on the board.
Right.
And this is a very Bunnyhoppor style of play. He will try and get in your head because that is one of his biggest advantages, is he is truly unflappable.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate on whether or not you play what is, quote, your best card on curve, or giving your opponent an opportunity to play into your best card.
Yeah.
This is actually something that, you know, kind of was a really big thing when Life Coach was still playing Hearthstone competitively, was to try and make a little bit of a suboptimal play to throw your opponent off into making your opponent feel like you have Rexar or not. Because that was still a good opportunity for Rexar on paper.
It was very good.
Right.
Yeah, very strong.
And now, with Rexar coming out, that's a full board clear.
That is a full board clear, and this from Bunnyhoppor means he's now no longer dying to burst from Soulfire and Doomguard. He calculated this perfectly, realizing on the previous turn, maybe he died to burst damage, but if he didn't heal up with Ziliax, clears the board now, and he can just start getting Lifesteal Beasts, charge Devilsaur on the board. This is some beautiful play from Bunny.
Exactly. So this is definitely a layer to setting something up, and now Deathstalker Rexar's Battle Cry, instead of dealing, what was it, 8 damage? Now it's dealt 12?
Yeah.
Really a big difference, and also can keep the pressure going because he can keep his Devilsaur alive here from this spot.
And even getting the eggs on the board is fine here. You can start play-deading them, maybe even Cobra Flanking Strike on it if Insane doesn't develop all too heavily onto the board.
Right. I mean, he also has just a charged Devilsaur to win tempo. So he has very good options at his disposal, depending on how the game pans out. And this is really bad for Insane. He draws
Just
2 cards and he
passes.
can't really play.
He's clearly just going for one big Fungalmancer turn, I suppose, on the following turn. Hoping that that'll give him the push to get over the finish line.
But I mean, Bunny picks up Terrascale Stalker so he can pop his own egg and trigger it twice, setting up 3 5/5s. He's not going to be super greedy because it looks like Bunnyhoppor just wants to play a little bit slower, knowing that there's still a lot of big bursts that can come out of the Zoo Warlock if he's not careful. So Lifesteal is a really important minion to try and get with the Vicious Scale Hide. If he wants to get out of like Doomguard and Soulfire range, because Insane didn't play anything for 7 mana.
And alarm bells definitely start ringing then. So I wonder, therefore, if he took the Nesting Rock on the first option, maybe he picks the Young Dragonhawk here, just so he can play it for 6 mana,
That's true.
get a taunt on the board, and try and stop Doomguard Soulfire lethal.
That's true.
I'm not sure if that was the first option he picked, but if it was, it's very much worth considering.
The Nesting Rock definitely was a good choice, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about. Not to mention that I believe this basically sets up a counter-lethal opportunity.
Yeah, I really like this play. It's Vicious Scalehide is always so tempting as one of the absolute premier beasts off of the Build-A-Beast hero power, but putting a taunt in play, he knows there is just no way that he dies now.
Concede. Bunnyhoppor takes the first game, and this was an unfavorable matchup. Death Rattle Hunter was a deck that would struggle against the entire lineup based off the nature of how fast Big Spell Control Mage, which is a little disappointing on my end, because I want to see how cards like Astromancer and Ziliax do in the modern forms of Big Spell Mage when you combine it with all the late game threats like Syndragosa, Frostless Jaina, and Dragoncaller Lana, which is really cool to see that. But, you know, it makes sense because Big Spell Mage is fantastic against these wide token-based boards, so banning it makes perfect sense in an Insane spot.
Yeah, it really is the only good anti-aggro deck for Bunnyhoppor. Like you said, the Token Druid, I guess, is... Oh, sorry, the Taunt Druid is his saving grace in this matchup. That should be able to get a win relatively easily in at least one of the matchups. The opposite of his saving grace, his Doom, dare I say, will probably be in the form of this Miracle Rogue, because up against an Odd Rogue, this is a severely miserable matchup.
Yeah, this is one of the most polarized matchups for Miracle Rogue. Odd Rogue is one of the fastest decks out there in the metagame, along with Tempo Mage. People put those 2 decks as probably the closest to pure aggro that we have in the current meta. And so that's where cards like Ziliax are going to be really important. And another thing is that Bunnyhoppor cut a little bit of his early game in his deck list, like 1 Firefly. So you're already going second, which is not something that you want in Miracle Rogue because you want to be very proactive. And even if, you know, his benefit of having the coin, for example, has been taken away because he doesn't have SI7 agent in his deck list. His deck list seems a lot more curtailed to try and beat those mid-range to control decks that Miracle Rogue has traditionally been very effective against.
Yeah, this is just the standard list now. Elix just straight up replaced SI7 agents in the Boomsday. Even just a couple days after it came out, Casey was playing Miracle Rogue at HCT Germany, and he had a list very similar to this one. I don't believe he had Ziliax in there. I believe it might have just been a 1 Valspine for 1 Ziliax. But as it currently stands, this deck is just not going to be getting the job done.
Yeah.
Against these aggressive decks with Miracle Rogue, you need to be making tempo swings big time.
Yeah.
Which means killing something off with backstab, preparation, stuff like that, whilst also developing your own stuff. And Bunnyhoppor has a couple of those tools, but not really the big minions he wants to throw down with it.
I do want to point out a couple things. Before the break, Derek and I were kind of talking about the statistics that Tempo/Miracle Rogue is struggling with. And I do want to throw it out there that these stats have largely been contaminated, if you will, by the people out there who won't let go of academic espionage. This is a card that is so fun to play, especially with Augmented Elec, where it says, shuffle 10 random cards from your opponent's class into your deck, and they all cost 1. And if you combine it with the Elec in preparation, for 4 mana, you basically get 20 cards in your deck, and you can do some crazy stuff like get a Death Knight for 1 mana. That being said, you know, a lot of players are starting to let it go from that. So Miracle Rogue is climbing in stats compared to the very beginning of the expansion, but that explains why its stats are so poor in the low 30s. In the Odd Rogue matchup, it's in the 20s of how bad it is for Miracle/Tempo Rogue. So, you know, take those statistics with a grain of salt. It doesn't tell you the entire picture, but that does explain a lot of why the matchup looks poor on paper.
It really does. Academic espionage just kind of goes against everything Miracle Rogue is trying to do. I think it's a slight misunderstanding of the deck because you're not trying to draw through your deck to get value. Traditionally, every kind of Miracle Rogue deck that's relied on value instead of damage through to face has just been worse. Like the version with Cold Blood and Leroy have always been the best variants of Miracle Rogue, even when there was Arcane Giants knocking about in the mix back in the day from One Night and Karazhan as well.
That being said, Derek, I'm going to counterpoint you by saying I think you misunderstand memers and what lengths they'll go to try and get some front page karma on the internet.
I'm going to say you misunderstand me.
I mean, I'm trying to work through the accent day by day.
I'm saying most of the audience probably misunderstands me as well.
Insane's going to get his minions dealt with, and I think, you know, this is a really important for Bunnyhoppor. Miracle Rogue loves to try and leverage his health total to try and get tempo swing. So, you know, in other matchups that are a little bit slower, Miracle Rogue's okay with taking a little bit of damage and developing their own minions into a board, but you can't really let Henge Clan Thug go unchecked. And Bunnyhoppor will also not let this Vicious Fledgling go unchecked too. And by using his coin, he still had a really good turn 4 play with the Thaldrai Strider. So this is still looking really good for Bunnyhoppor so far, because Insane doesn't have a very powerful turn 5 play that we've come to expect.
Yeah, we were looking, I think Bunnyhoppor will be really afraid of, like you said, a Fungal Mancer, maybe even just a Giggling Inventor could be enough to lock him out of taking those valuable trades. And here for Bunnyhoppor, it's kind of a sad but a definitely necessary turn where he would love to save that backstab for the Valspine to make one massive tempo swing, but he will just lose the game to that Vicious Fledgling if it's not dealt with instantly.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of the downside of not having a dagger charge up to deal with the 4/4 and develop this Henge Clan Thug, because Insane can't do both. He either lets the Henge Clan Thug die, which is obviously not what you want to do, or he takes a turn of weak development and then give Miracle Rogue some footing to start punching back and being aggressive on their end.
That's a really good point, Dan. The fact that he just attacked face last turn does mean I think that he was setting up for Dagger and Blood Knight on this turn was his thinking. But on turn 4, what is Miracle Rogue playing other than a 4/4? It might be Augmented Elec or Henge Clan Thug or Thaldrai Strider. They all have 4 health, so having the ability to go just Deadly Poison plus a 3-drop, even though you're only getting half the value from Deadly Poison, would have put him a lot further ahead on board.
That's right. Now, Bunnyhoppor has a couple of choices here as well. As much as setting up a dagger is fantastic, you know, he could also fight back for board control, because one thing that is unusual about this build of modern-day Miracle Rogue for Boomsday Project is that it's kind of going back to the old days of Miracle Rogue when they had too many 5-drops. They had Azure Drake, they had Sludge Belcher, they even started playing Antique Healbot at one point. And it started just getting, and then, of course, Gadget's Hand Auctioneer had the 5-mana cost as well. So it was very complicated and jam-packed. And you're starting to see the problem now, too, with Miracle Rogue just kind of having that even Warlock syndrome. Just like, I want to play all these minions, but I have such a limited amount of mana to spend. So I actually do favor the Ziliax, because I feel like it's fairly hard to get it out of your hand. And as we mentioned, there's not many things are magnetizing it to swing the board anyways. So force your opponent to react. Your opponent might even overkill it with their own dagger. And then perhaps Masihara can get some big opportunities, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, you just want to use it while you can. Bunnyhoppor does want to use his health as a resource here to pull the game back in his favor, but already at 22, it's starting to get a bit scary, because 1 Cold Blood, 1 Fungal Mancer, and he's just locked out of the game now. It was a very difficult decision, though, as Augmented Elec didn't look all too bad on that turn either. But like you said, there are too many good minions available to Miracle Rogue now. However, that is a big ol' swing back in Bunny's favor and just what he was looking for.
Bunnyhoppor did not pick up a really cheap spell or minion. Being able to use Vile Spine this turn could pretty much almost be game-winning. So, you know, it hasn't been determined yet. However, double 3-drops is still a very reasonable way to go onto the board, because I think Bunnyhopper's objective from this point on is to stabilize, because he can refill with Elven Minstrel. So by playing a little bit more aggressively, as long as Insane doesn't get Myra's Unstable Element, he should be able to outvalue the Odd Rogue, and because of his life total and playing Ziliax early on, absorbing a lot of damage and trading, Bunnyhopper's in a pretty good spot.
I'd say he's not in the worst spot. The main benefit as Miracle Rogue is it's usually fairly easy to stabilize if you get those big tempo swings. And once you do, you don't have to rely on drawing through your whole deck to stabilize. You just kill them. As soon as Miracle Rogue has an uncontested board, they play Leroy, they play Cold Blood, the game is over in 2 turns, absolute maximum.
This is something that I believe Odd Rogue is running into a lot of problems, especially since they're kind of playing a little bit heavier deck list themselves with Giggling Inventors and Myra's Unstable Element coming into the mix. Because the deck is a lot fatter, you don't really often get the combo, so it's actually extremely crucial your timing on things like Flame Elemental. Insane value just having that little bit of board in case he drew Fungalmancer, but we kind of see the opposite effect. Before, he was a little bit too aggressive with the resources, and then now he's not being conservative enough. And that's the balance that a lot of the aggro players who play Odd Rogue can recognize. It's not always just about playing your 1s, 3s, and 5s and going face. You have to just be very careful with your timing, playing with your hand, and also what you expect to draw off your top of your deck.
And this has been the case with every Rogue matchup throughout history, I suppose, Quest Rogue aside, because that's its entirely own beast. If you remember back to the Tempo Rogue days when there was Keleseth in there, cards like Valspine, activating those were what won you the game. The tempo swings were just unbeatable.
Right.
And so for Insane, losing that combo effect there, while he does get to develop a 3-4, means, if Bunnyhoppor did have a slightly more reasonable hand with a couple of spells there, maybe he'd be able to swing it back in his favor.
Right.
As it currently stands, though, I think it's all just a little bit too unreactive for Bunnyhoppor. None of his cards answer threats, they just develop a board.
Yep. Part of the problem with Miracle Rogue is that it can beat itself, right? But I like this play of the Gadgetzan Auctioneer for Bunnyhoppor. I don't think a dagger is going to do anything really significant. So the Gadgetzan Auctioneer is basically just trying to gain health. It's a giant taunt minion. Like, kill this off now. Insane can deal with it, but that's still 4 damage that's not going towards Bunnyhoppor.
This guy's toast.
This is why when I was talking at Summer Champs to Viper about Miracle Rogue, and I was asking him about Sprint versus Gadgetzan, he was saying he loves the Gadgetzan version because it's a minion that says if you don't kill it, you lose the game.
Insane took a little bit extra damage there, which is a little bit scary because Insane could have traded the South Sea Deckhand to the 4-1 and then attack the other minion instead. Actually, no, it doesn't really matter, right? Because the Gadgetzan was at 4 attack.
Yeah,
so apologies there. Never mind, doesn't really make a difference. But you have to be careful with going down low yourself because of the threat of Leroy.
I think it's 16 though, because you're so close to lethal yourself, you're never dying this turn, you're probably okay with it.
That makes sense.
Because knowing distinct breakpoints is a very important facet of Hearthstone at the moment, with so many of the aggro decks running huge amounts of burst in the form of Soulfire, Fireball, Cold Blood, Blessing of Might. Knowing exactly what you're dead to is a really important part of Hearthstone play.
And by being put on 4 health, I mean, that means Insane will be very close to finishing this game, and Bunnyhoppor needs to draw something to do. And I think he just drew another minion. Wow, just concede. So everything looked okay to start things off the game for Bunnyhoppor, but just a couple of string of clunky minions really costing that tempo / Miracle Rogue statistics.
I would, however, like his matchup against Zoo with the Miracle Rogue a little bit more. You can make some big old tempo swings with the Odd Rogue, and with the Miracle Rogue, and there's a little bit less burst damage, I think, or consistent burst damage because the dagger isn't there for Zoo. However, Bunnyhoppor is lining up that Taunt Druid instead, which I am actually finding quite fascinating that a lot of players are bringing this to the fall playoffs, because it is mainly distinct from all other druids because it doesn't have Plague or Malfurion, is the main downside of playing this version over The other variants, it's a lot weaker to aggro in that respect, but you do have a few cards that actually shore up those aggro matchups quite strongly.
Oh, yeah. Wild Growth, Nourish. That's the O card.
That'll do it, yeah.
You know, all joking aside, maybe not all joking aside, Bunnyhoppor, we mentioned this at the beginning of the series. In the previous season for Summer, where he ended up qualifying for the top 8 and ultimately winning Summer Championship, he was kind of going on a little tirade about how Taunt Druid sucks. Almost kind of like a callback to Waterboy with Adam Sandler, if you will. Whereas like Taunt Druid sucks, it really, really sucks. Repeat, rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat.
Why bring it now? So is it because Bunnyhoppor anticipated a lot more of a controlling field? Or is it because people don't anticipate Taunt Druid? Or is there another reason, Derek?
I think the reason is that the nature of Druid has changed so much since the Summer Championships. Obviously, the Boomsday project has been released as well. But mainly, Taunt Druid was the Druid deck back then. It was the premier version of Druid. And then after that, people discovered Big Druid. Had a bit of success with that. Board Control 1 Seat story with his Big Druid in there. And then people discovered with the new cards with Floop in the Boomsday project, Malagos Druid, Togwaggle Druid are just the best. Those are the versions you play, and Taunt Druid does very well against those kind of Druid decks. And I think that's the main thing here for Bunnyhoppor, is he realized in such a Druid-heavy meta, a Malagos Druid-heavy meta, you play the Taunt Druid and you target those decks pretty strongly.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. People don't anticipate Taunt Druid, so you have a little bit of surprise factor in how the matchups pan out. And then it's good against other Druids.
Yep.
So if Druids is the #1 class, which, you know, according to statistics, it's leaning towards Druid being one of the top 3 for sure, you at least have an opportunity to fight against a lot of Druids if they don't make it.
And even against the aggressive decks, you can do stuff like this, where you just ramp up. He's got the Wraths, which a lot of the Malagos Druids don't have room for in their deck as well. Spellstone, another Wild Growth. If he can find any decently big card like Primordial Drake, Oakheart, like you alluded to earlier on, he should be in a very reasonable spot.
Yeah. Insane, going for the Soulfire for the swing on the board. But Bunnyhoppor has Spellstone and Wrath ready to go. And for Insane, actually, I think he's completely okay with ditching the Soul Infusion, even though it's one of the better tempo cards to push out a lot of value on the board. He'd rather have these Voodoo Doctor to potentially buff the Light Wars, assuming that they survive.
Yeah, man, buffing Fungalmancer with the Soul Infusion is really not what you're looking to hit. You just want Fungalmancer, Chain Gang, even a Flame Imp or something just to start smacking your opponent right at the start of the game.
The second Wild Growth also could be a really big factor in this game. One Wild Growth, of course, monumental for Druid's success. Everyone knows Wild Growth on 2 and its win rate, very similar to Keleseth. But you know, with Taunt Druid, there's a huge devoid after 5 mana plays. There's no 6 mana card in spending play. You don't even run Malfurion because you don't want any beast to come out with Witching Hour. So, you know, getting to 7 mana or 8 mana the following turn is really big, because then you can start playing things just as they are. You don't have to have Hadronox Max Ogre. Just playing Primordial Drake into Lich King can just win the game.
I totally agree. Finding yourself a Nourish is so important, because Taunt Druid is basically just a more stable, consistent version of Big Druid. Your initial swing with Oakheart is less good because you're not running the Dracari Enchanter, but your follow-up is much more powerful because you have the Witching Hours, you have value through all stages of the game. And for Bunnyhoppor now, with an Ironwood Golem as well, if he's not met with a Fungalmancer, which he's obviously praying won't be there, it's looking like he'd be in a really good spot.
Yeah, even Fungalmancer coming down doesn't mean the Ironwood Golem would just die to a single trade, though. So it does kind of serve some purpose there. But you're right in the sense that he doesn't have a good follow-up play if the Ironwood Golem goes down. So, you know, if he had Primordial Drake in his hand, by all means, go for the Ironwood Golem, soften up the board. Primordial Drake can clean up. Not going to really be the case here, though.
Yeah, I think I actually like this because of exactly Fungalmancer. As I was talking about, it has the same health, so it still requires a double trade, which I assume Insane will just ignore and go face.
Right.
But Bunnyhoppor, the extra attack power means Swipe is much lighter. Even just the hero power to take out one of these minions means he can sacrifice his health total to pull the board back immediately, heal up with Branching Paths, and find himself in a decent spot.
Right, and also having 2 4-mana plays this turn, so that way he's not stuck playing only Branching Paths and stuck with the cube. So it's very good mana partitioning too on Bunnyhoppor's side. Now, Bunnyhoppor has an interesting way to split this branching pass. He can actually not use it to even draw. He could use it to gain life and get plus attack to keep the board.
That's what I'm
right?
looking at.
Those are all viable options at his disposal if he feels like he's under too much pressure. He could also just draw, but with Dragon Hatcher, that's like another way to pull a big taunt minion. And I don't think Insane has a lot of easy ways to deal with that. Void Rippers have not been played at all, really.
No,
and that's usually the way you can flip like Sleepy Dragons and whatnot to get past them.
Yeah, one giant Sleepy Dragon, as I said, would be devastatingly poor for Bunny.
No silence either, Vic. That's a good point. So you have to deal with it the honest way.
Which is very difficult. This is where Taunt Druid thrives, when there's no damage coming through to face, no cheating to kill off these taunts like Miracle Road can do.
Yeah.
He should be in a great spot, and he goes with the exact play we were talking about, just solidifying up this board as much as possible to prepare for that Dragon Hatcher.
Soul Infusion is, I guess it's okay. you do squeeze in a slightly better tempo play.
I mean, you go for it.
Yeah. It's just that Fungal Mancer's not the main you want, but it's still something.
It means that your guy can survive, just cleanly trade through the Ironwood Golem, survives at, 3 health then, which is pretty respectable, difficult for the Druid to deal with.
Yeah, but no matter how it looks, the cube will get a nice trade on the board. So then, and then
maybe you go Soul Infusion after to buff up the Happy Ghoul for a stronger play next turn.
Starting from turn 9 onwards, I'm really afraid of what I can drop. I think I want the most power possible.
I agree.
And if you don't trade into the cube, you lose your 7-3.
And then when Sleepy Dragon, Dragon Hatcher, or Oakheart comes down, 4/4s just don't get it done anymore. They trade way too favorably for Bunnyhoppor, so keeping this 7 health minion alive. I think I like it because Insane has to play a little bit more for board here, I think.
In the event his opponent gets a Sleepy Dragon to play it, needs to deal with that. Bunnyhoppor also having the Taunt Druid list is something. This is something that I actually find comes up fairly often. But Big Druid pulling things like Ysera and Deathwing and not protecting your life ends up becoming a huge liability many times.
And it's just a necessary evil because against the control decks, you need those cards like Ysera, or your deck just doesn't do enough. And against the aggro decks, it's a nightmare because you just want to protect yourself. So Taunt Druid is definitely the more stable against the aggressive strategies.
And not being able to kill Dragon Hatcher or even the Sleepy Dragon means that Bunnyhoppor, I think, has weathered most of the storm. Carnivorous Cube being picked up is also kind of a really big deal if Branching Paths can pick up a Naturalize, and then all of a sudden you can cube the Sleepy Dragon, naturalize it, and then that's 100% game over at that
You could even do it on this Dragon Hatcher, right? Just pull more dragons from your deck.
I like it.
Worth considering.
Oh, GG. Look at
that. What do you know? I guess the game ends.
So Bunnyhoppor has the cube and the Naturalize, so I think he's considering if he needs to gain life in any capacity or gain plus attack, just in case. But, you know, I say throw caution to the wind. You've gotten so far. Oh, he's not going for a cube Naturalize combo.
I guess his thinking here is that if you're not careful, Zoo can actually extend kind of far into the late game. At which point, you don't need aggro strategies with the Taunt Druid. You need to have a lot of value, which comes in the form of cubing your Hadronauts or cubing a healthier minion.
Sure, that makes sense.
Ooh.
Despicable Dreadlord. That's actually... Oh, man, Solarium as well. That's a lot of cards. But the Dreadlord's a little bit hard to pass up this turn, given that you can get a really good trade.
You just really want to kill the Dragon Hatcher, though. It's so strong still.
But there's so many ways you can get punished for the Solarium and still not deal with the Dragon Hatcher. And one Soulfire already has been used.
Good point. I think you've got to take the Dreadlord here, because if Insane's winning this game, it's not happening quickly. It's praying that your opponent has got miserable draws, and then you win through board in the next 2-3 turns.
Yeah. And, you know, Bunnyhoppor holding on to Naturalize, with every single turn, another dragon being pulled from his deck means he gets closer to Hadronox, which is, at that point, it is definitely over.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yes. So there's a lot of upside for Bunnyhoppor dragging out the game and holding on to his Naturalize. And if I'm insane, this keeps me in the game. It doesn't win me the board,
Not even close.
but it gives you a chance.
But having said that, if Insane does believe, if Bunnyhoppor does have a really bad hand, which we can see he kind of does, it's not the best hand I've ever seen. Insane could then start to dominate the board with the Solarium, maybe finding Doom Guards, pushing for more damage.
Yeah. Swipe's not a bad pickup either, to be honest. Just dealing with the Dreadlord and hero powering it. You have 21 life, so you still have a lot of wiggle room to use your hero power and trade into minions. And then pull out yet another dragon. There's 2 Primordial Drakes and 2 Sleepy Dragons, and that's it. So it's a 4-8 or a 4-12 that comes out on the other side.
And I think this is the play he's going to go for. If he wasn't going to go for Cube Naturalize on his Dragon Hatcher this last turn, why would you do it this turn? It's just even more vulnerable to giving your opponent more cards.
Right. And Dragon Hatcher is just so powerful in this spot specifically.
Yeah.
Your opponent can't deal with it, you repeatedly get value, thinning your deck so you can get to your win condition. Insane needs to come up something big with this Solarium.
Let's see what he can get.
Okay, that's just stuff.
Yeah, it's that is just stuff. I agree. I mean, you play it. There's no plague in your opponent's deck, so going wide has less downside.
There is a huge downside to this play, though, and the fact that most of your board is 2 health. So
Yes.
a single Primordial Drake, which you know is possible because Bunnyhoppor pulled 2 Sleepy Dragons and 1 Primordial Drake.
Destroy.
That being said, the situation is not looking good, so I think you have to take your chances here.
Yeah, you got to play real risky here. Just hope that you can dominate the board. Again, maybe your opponent has 2 Witching Hours in hand and, I don't know, something else completely useless. It's hard to imagine for Bunnyhoppor a hand that's bad enough to the point where he would lose.
You trade this 4-12. Does not. You're just going to take his chances here.
Oh.
Yeah, and now Dragon Hatcher's not even needed because that's every
Traded
dragon. That is devastating.
And now for Bunnyhoppor, his hand with the Cube and Naturalize, he very possibly could just play it on this Sleepy Dragon, but Insane doesn't even want to see it. He knows this one's over. No answer for those giant taunts. And Bunnyhoppor, with his pretty unfavored lineup against this aggressive strategy, is 2-1 up.
Well, Taunt Druid specifically had pretty neater and Dave's explanation of everything because it just kind of brings us back to, you know, what is enjoyable about everything in terms of Hearthstone itself. So I just want to point out that keep it up, but stop having so much fun without me. I just feel like FOMO. You know, I feel like I'm missing out on all the fun here because I'm like here trying to think about cutting edge and statistics and try to be very objective about everything. Derek, do you feel the same way?
I mean, it sounds to me like you're not having fun with me when you say that, which I know can't be true because of how much you enjoy spending time with me.
Look, I'm just saying that they're having a lot of fun without me.
Okay.
I'm saying that I wish that I was included because, you know, in middle school, I was very much excluded from a lot of things. And now, 20 years later, it's still the same thing.
I feel your pain, man.
Yeah. We can have our own fun.
Let's do it. Should we cast some Hearthstone?
That's right. We can do whatever we want. We can hire gnomes and play blackjack.
You maybe can. I'm on a tenuous lease while Kibler's away. So.
That's right, Derek. We don't want to get you fired just yet. Let's talk a little bit about Miracle Rogue versus Zoo Warlock. This is a matchup that's actually been here since the beginning of the
for a long
vanilla.
time.
Yeah. But has gone through so many different changes of like what they like to do. Zoo's gone from being very board-centric and slow to a little bit fast. Like we've seen the days of like Mal'Ganis in Zoo, right? Where you just play like very methodically. And then we've had Miracle Rogue play aggressive or tempo-oriented or combo-oriented. How do you feel like Zoo Warlock versus Miracle is these days?
So this is a matchup I played a lot just before the Boomsday project came out, where I was playing a lot of Miracle Rogue on ladder, and considering how bad Miracle Rogue usually is against the aggressive decks, this is one of the matchups I was having the most success in as the Miracle Rogue, because when you had cards like Backstab, Prep, SI7 Agent, you could do a tremendous job of swinging the board back against the Zoo, at which point they had to use Soulfires to kill off your Edwins and Hench Clan Thugs. They fell behind on board and couldn't deliver lethal damage. I feel like it's got a little bit less good for the Rogue, though, since Boomsday came out, because the augmented LX that we see there, having just kicked SI7 Agent out of the squad, mean that their ability to swing the board in a big tempo swing has been lowered a fair amount. And the ability for Zoo to make huge tempo swings with the Happy Ghouls and Soul Infusion is just way too much for the Rogue to deal with.
Yeah. Another thing I was going to talk about was debating whether or not we even attack with the dagger this turn.
Always a consideration.
And without an actual spell to capitalize on this preparation draw, Bunnyhoppor is stuck developing. And I feel like with the attack too, it's pretty much optimistic, but in Bunnyhopper's mind, he thinks that forcing your opponent to commit to a heal is better than actually whatever your opponent can do onto, say, play Keleseth or another really important 3-mana card.
Well, it would have to be you stop them from pretty much going Keleseth, and you also force them to have Voodoo Doctor or Fungal Enchanter. Those are the only 2 cards they could have to punish this play, and I suppose Voidwalker as well.
Yeah, they're not really keeping those cards very often, are they?
And again, for Bunnyhoppor here, he needs to be taking risks in this matchup. He needs to say, if they do have the heal, fine, I'm in a bad spot, but if they don't have it, I'm actually in with a chance of winning this game, even with a pretty miserable hand like the one Bunnyhoppor has. Again, just no spells to be working with, only the double prep.
Yeah, and the respect shown from Insane to trade into the Elec to try and protect his assets when he has things like Doomguard. Kind of telling of what Insane feels like this matchup is. He says, I'm not going to try to rush my opponent, instead I'm going to try to play very board-centric. And it makes sense in his mind, because he only has 1 Doomguard, for example, so it's a little bit less on like rushing. He's not playing any like Leroy Jenkins shenanigans to try and burst his opponent. So Insane is a little bit more board-minded or board-centric.
Yeah.
But the punish is kind of here with not being able to deal with Hench Clan Thug. He's looking for Soulfire. Oh.
Ooh, that's a pretty big miss on the Solarium there.
In fact, he's also ditching some of his better cards, too.
Yeah, Fungalmancer is really sad to be letting go, because you want to punish the Rogue for not having those removal spells by pushing 4 damage to face on the turn you play Fungalmancer.
Right.
In the light's name.
I mean, Insane has to just let his opponent have the Hench Clan Thug this turn. And Bunnyhoppor can just pick up a single spell, and that would warp the state of the game here.
Any half-decent spell is massive here for Bunnyhoppor. Backstab is good. It's a decent card to get here, but not with those preps.
I mean, I think it's actually still fine with the Ziliax in this spot. You said half-decent spell. I think that's exactly what came
Fair enough.
into his hand. Yeah, exactly what Doctor has ordered.
Nice. Does look like from where I'm sat, a pretty easy turn where you can clear up the whole board with Ziliax, heal back up, protect that Thug.
Right.
Because your opponent clearly doesn't have the Soulfire, or they would have let rip with it right away on the previous turn. And as soon as you pick up Gadgetzan Auctioneer or any kind of spell like Prep or, sorry, Shiv or Fan of Knives, you can start cycling through your deck. And then what can Insane do?
Yeah, this is such a scary position to be in. Your opponent, Miracle Rogue has 2 minions that you want to remove.
Yeah.
And they still have cards that can completely swing the board here.
I imagine if there was a Sap here or a Volspine Slayer to pull this back for Bunnyhoppor, this would have just done nothing to the board.
Ooh. The Shiv comes in the hand, so now Bunnyhoppor does have some choices. Does he want to develop his entire hand? He could play everything by prepping the Shiv, seeing what happens, maybe even getting fortunate by drawing Volspine Slayer as well.
I really like starting off with this. You just want to make the biggest play you can every single turn with Rogue. I wouldn't even hate the prep ban here. Maybe you hold on to that for if they go wide on the board. Maybe you don't, and you make like a 10-10 Edwin on this turn.
You said it yourself. There is no silence in this deck. I'm waiting for Big Daddy Edwin to take us home. 12-12.
And this is what Miracle Rogue does. It makes these unwinnable situations just look like a joke. This was so easy for Bunnyhoppor when he went for that giant all-in play.
It's moments like this where you think, how is Miracle Rogue unfavored against anything? And you know, Bunnyhoppor even has the Valthori Strider for like the augmented Elix energy.
Yep.
Insane. Playing Dugong from hand to try and stabilize the board state. That shows you everything you need to know about the way the game is panning out. And this is half of Insane's life that's going to be disappearing if Bunnyhoppor chooses to go face here.
Pretty easy two-turn lethal for Bunnyhoppor, represented on board. Probably won't work out that way, but if Insane does want to stop himself from dying, he has to just trade in the Feldori Strider. He's nowhere near lethal. No answer to this Edwin whatsoever.
Right.
It's looking pretty over for him in an insane turn here. Bunnyhoppor realized the exact moment to go all in with this Miracle Rogue, which is a difficult skill.
No Giggling Inventor in the deck list for Zoo, and I think he also saw a Center Chain Gang being discarded.
I think both Chain Gangs.
Was it both?
Because one came off the Solarium, I believe.
You could be right. No, I think it was a Flame Imp and 2 5-mana cards. It was a Fungal.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Lord.
You're
But either way, this is looking lights out for our Zoo Warlock player, which means Zoo Warlock would have lost 3 times this series, Darroch. And I think that just goes to show you that you can't really count out these rogues. And more specifically, you can't really count out Bunnyhoppor. I feel like he is a player we've seen a lot in the past year and a half win these matchups that don't exactly make sense on paper. But that's just part of what his lineup is accounting for. And of course, pristine play.
Absolutely. I think, even thinking right back to the first game when he didn't go for the Deathstalker Rexar, when we were both cooing over how insane it looked on that turn, holding back, forcing his opponent to overcommit, because that's what he does so well. He doesn't only see the game from his perspective, he's very good at forcing his opponent to make plays that they don't want to. Disrupting the opponent's plays is a very important facet of Hearthstone.
Insane can technically stay alive if he just plays Fungal Enchanter, but he life taps, gets the taunt.
That's a pretty big draw.
Just needs to stabilize a little bit, and maybe the boy can go wide enough to the point where his opponent can't gild everything. Bunnyhoppor just needs to find a little bit of damage. Shiv could help. Things like Fan of Knives #2 that can be of assistance.
Yeah, shivving the Voidwalker is the only reason. Fan of Knives is the only reason to shiv the Voidwalker. Otherwise, you just ship it face, I suppose.
Right. Leroy, Vilespine Slayer. I mean, even a Mossy Horror would have been lethal.
This is very smart.
A sap.
There we go.
Is it? Bunnyhoppor improves 5-2 and is now in striking distance for the top 8. And you know, even if he doesn't, he still gets a pretty decent amount of points. And I also want to applaud Bunnyhoppor since not only is he doing it